thank God they're losing it now. We no longer live in a unipolar world. We live in a multipolar world now.
We don't know yet.
No, but we are. We do.
So
the facts bear it out.
So that's something that we should discuss more about.
But do you like it though? Let's talk about this now. Now we're talking about. Do you like the fact we live in a multipolar world today?
Oh, that's always been my dream.
Exactly.
My whole Pan-Africanism is an Africa that is not a pushover.
Perfect.
In the scheme of things globally. Yes. That's exactly why I'm not only sticking out my neck for a Nigeria that is powerful, but an Africa that's united, prosperous, and also powerful. I don't like a unipolar world. Exactly. A unipolar world is too cold for me.
Too risky, too dangerous.
Yes. So, and I've been in a world that's been mostly unipolar my entire life.
Yeah, we have. Yeah. Up to 2016, 2017, we're in a unipolar world.
I participated in second slavery, so I know what it is. Yes.
Yeah,
voluntary.
But I think we all should be happy as Africans that we live in a multipolar world now, because when America
the monopolar world you are living in,
the multipolar world,
yes, it's still a place where Africa is a minor player. So Africans can only benefit from multipolar words or bipolar word. Bipolar is an operating word.
Yeah, that was
bipolar word is the one that we were in when the
Soviet
Russians
Union and America.
We were just being subjected to mood swings between two power blocks, the East Bloc and the West Bloc. And we're somehow back to it now, but in a more stylish way, you understand? So what we call a multipolar world is still a bipolar world in which there are other players, multinationals.
But I think what Africa didn't have before that Africa has now is, look at what Tinubu said when Tinubu when he was elected. Tinubu was asked by I didn't see, but I read it on papers that he was asked by the journalist why America wasn't keen on congratulating him when he won. If you remember, they kind of waited. The British immediately congratulated Tinubu. The French did the same, but America was kind of cold feet towards his election, and he was asked, "What does he think?" And Tinubu was like, if they don't, he will just go to the Chinese. An African president would never, a president of an African country will never speak that way in the past. That you will say.
But what has that brought to you?
No, but the point I'm making is, I'm not trying to justify.
What I'm trying to tell you is that if you're a student of history, that has always been there.
No, not really. Really.
No,
they could,
it was worse.
No, America could do what
Africa was the testing ground for this bipolar
there was
agenda.
No option. There was no option.
That's
before.
why there was war in Angola.
No, but the point
in
is,
Mozambique.
The point I'm making
that was why apartheid lasted for long.
The point I'm making is you had no option.
There was always been a Chama Mao that Africans went to.
Yeah.
It was the reason why this man was overthrown in Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah.
Yeah,
because he didn't listen to Americans, even though he went to American university.
I didn't mention Russia. I mentioned China.
No.
Sorry, Tinubu mentioned China.
Yeah.
He didn't mention Russia.
I'm telling you that there used to be an East Bloc made up of China and the USSR.
That was more
of which the USSR was the biggest power player. But they've always been around. And Africa has always been a place where they play. And I'm just warning you.
Yeah.
And advising. Well, not let me use the word warning. But I'm advising that you are cautious about the optimism that what is playing out now is a multipolar world in which the African continent is benefiting. No. The African continent will benefit from a multipolar world when Africa has the capacity and the resources to produce and to create wealth, prosperity, and unite. So until that happens, until Africa itself as a continent becomes a China, or an American, or America as it is, or even Canada, this idea that we are in some kind of multipolar world in which we are benefiting because people are constructing highways for us, which we should be doing ourselves, or helping us to get loans, which then puts us back into a bind, is not the multipolar world that we should be proud of.
Two things can be true at the same time. Every continent or every country needs help.
No, I'm trying to tell you is that it happened before.
No, I do agree. I see the points you're making, but the point I'm also making is the African continent needs help needs technology.
The
Technology
Africans
transfer.
didn't need help.
No, but
Africans put themselves in a situation where they were walking around with begging bowls.
The technology that we
instead
need,
of creating
the tech that we need
the
to make
value
Africa
and adding the value that could have made Africa a competitor. It was while Africa was sleeping with all these crazy leaders that Japan rose from ashes after the Second World War. Brazil, India, So until the continent of Africa is able to also produce its own nuclear weapons or have it.
We don't even need it really.
When you say nuclear weapons, you are not talking about how to kill other people. It also might be nuclear power.
Energy, nuclear energy.
Give you nuclear energy. Yeah. What I'm saying is that the competition that you want is not a competition of whose bowl is biggest. That is why the conversation about USAID is of importance to some people, because Africa has been reduced to this continent that is waiting for USAID to create jobs for their doctors and nurses. And it's easy to say, USAID is funding Boko Haram and all that, and we should stop giving money to Africa. But the person who is advancing it is one of the biggest defense contractors in the US, Elon Musk. If you know how much he makes every day for everything that he throws up in the air, you'll be shocked. So, but it's easy because Africa is not a player. Even Saudi Arabia as a country is treated with better respect than Africa.
Because Saudi Arabia is a developed country.
Exactly. So if you don't get there,
I think we're both saying the same thing.
So yes, if you don't get there, and it's just about the size of your begging bowl, you're begging for technology, begging for aid, begging for science, you're begging for teachers, you're begging for nurses, you're begging for food, you're begging for even sexual protection, condoms. So you're not there. And until we have that concrete conversation about an Africa Renaissance that's not just about buzzwords.
The point I'm making is, and I get the view you're advancing, but the point I'm making is, in a multipolar world, when we were in a unipolar world, America could do whatever she liked. The six countries America defeated in the past, Libya, Somalia, Iraq, Afghanistan, all those countries that she went to war against, that was in a unipolar world. In the world of today, America cannot do that. America cannot just say, let's go through and take away Gaddafi. She can't do that today.
Yeah,
because
sure?
we didn't. In a multiple, Trump, who I love, tried to do that in Venezuela. In his first time, he couldn't do it in Venezuela.
No, because
he couldn't take away Maduro.
Yes, I'm sure you say you love Trump.
No, but that's the point
and
I'm making. Right? In a multipolar world,
so
America cannot
even in a
do
unipolar
that.
world, there were places they couldn't defeat.
No, but look at what they did in Libya. In a unipolar world, Libya fell.
Let me remind you.
Afghanistan fell. All
Cuba
these countries fell.
Cuba is 90 miles from the US. Why couldn't they defeat Cuba?
Yeah, but we are talking of. This is.
No, I'm giving you an example.
No, we're comparing.
They didn't succeed everywhere.
We're comparing apples to oranges. Of course, they're not going to succeed everywhere. The point is,
so
they succeeded in these other cases.
I'm telling you that America has advanced enough today not to need to even go to Libya to kill Gaddafi.
You and I know there is an ongoing conversation about going to war against Iran. You and I know that, right? Iran is the next country, right?
Yeah. The conclusion we need to make.
Yeah.
You may not accept.
Yeah.
Is that the overly optimistic
it's not
position that somehow Africa is benefiting from a multipolar disagreement amongst the world is not.
No, at least we have options. That's the point I'm making.
Which options do you have? To go and beg from China?
Not really beg.
And then
even the Chinese had to beg at some point.
That's the point.
The Chinese had to beg at some point. They're not going to beg now.
They're not begging.
No, but the Chinese
in
had to beg.
2025.
No, but I get. Of course, is the point.
If you all started at the same time, a country like Nigeria, was paying salaries of workers in Cuba. They're providing electricity to several West African countries. 2025, they can't refine their oil.
Yeah.
So what are we benefiting
I think
from?
we're both saying the point I'm making is
probably maybe we should agree that we're saying the same thing.
No.
Except
let's talk about.
I am not a Trumpite.
No, of course. I've always known that. But the point before we went on this detail, let's just finish and put a pin to this part of our talk. I never even this was not part of my question, but since we entered this, I wanted us to continue. The point I'm making is every country, every continent needs help. The Chinese after their 100 years of humiliation, needed help as well from America. When Bill Clinton accepted the Chinese into WTO, I'm sure you know this history. China became what it became today. So at some point, the Chinese in their transition after communism and everything needed the help of the Americans. So every country needs help. Africa finds itself in this stage of its development where it needs the help of another power to help her become what she needs to become. If we have smart leaders, they will make use of that help, develop the continent, develop the country, take the loans, take the funds, build the best roads, build the best schools, build the best hospitals, get the technology that we need, the 5D, the 4D, whatever we need to develop, the ships, whatever we need to develop our continent, we'll bring it down here. And at some point become the China that China is today. But every continent, every country needs that help. What wasn't happening before was America was not willing to give that to Africa. All America did was use USAID, which we're going to talk about since you mentioned it, to overthrow countries and to funnel funds to this and this. But yes, they did some good by providing antiretroviral drugs to those with HIV and AIDS. But the point is, the Chinese, compared to America,
I don't want you to
compared to America, the Chinese,
the impression or
yeah,
the conclusion you are making that, I'm not defending USAID, so that when we get there,
let's talk about USAID now.
So, but what I don't want you to get away with is the position that somehow your love for a multipolar world is going to somehow resolve the illusion
no, that's not
that Africa has no option except it produces, except it prospers, except it's self-sustaining after self-realization and evaluation. So nothing solves the problem. If it is just to increase the size of our begging bowls,
not really. I mean, I think,
of course, you get more aids.
I think
more arms, but no progress.
I think for me, multipolar world, of course, it has its own disadvantages. But the point is, at least Africans can look elsewhere.
Nobody's going to be an island in a world like this. I understand that, but I'm just saying.
I see the points you're making.